It's been a big week in politics in the US, with Democrats having some victories at the ballot box. It'll be a big part of Planet America's show this week, and host John Barron is with me in the studio. Good to see you, John.
Hi, Ros.
So take us through some of these results, and do they represent a shift against Donald Trump?
It certainly does. This week, of course, marks 1 year since Donald Trump's historic re-election victory, and 1 year until the congressional midterm elections, which will decide the balance of power on Capitol Hill and will determine Donald Trump's ability to legislate in the second half of his second term. So this week's elections are referred to as the off-year elections. They have a lower turnout, they don't gain nearly as much attention, but this time round, very, very different. And unusually, the greatest attention of all was focused on the election to see who the next mayor of New York City was going to be. Now, New York, it's the biggest city in the United States. A lot of New York mayors have had national and international profiles. Think of Rudy Giuliani, Bill de Blasio, John Lindsay back in the day. But the fact that Zohran Mamdani, a 34-year-old Muslim American born in Uganda, identifies as a democratic socialist, so politically in that sort of far left mould of a Bernie Sanders, that he has been elected mayor of New York, home to Wall Street and Manhattan millionaires and old money going back to the founders. And here we have somebody who is promising free childcare, free buses, government-run grocery stores. This is the kind of thing you expect to see in Havana, Cuba, not New York, New York. So this was a pretty big deal, Ros, as were, for Democrats, the other less high-profile victories they had. The governor of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, and governor-elect of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. What's interesting about them is that while all of the attention, and certainly here in Australia, a lot of the attention's been on Mamdani because he's so young and interesting and different, these two women that have been elected statewide in these other states are much more centrist politically. They're more like a Joe Biden or a Hillary Clinton. And so there is this really interesting dynamic for Democrats. They're popping the champagne corks. They're saying, hey, after that terrible defeat for us and Kamala Harris a year ago, we're back, baby. We've won these elections. But what is the lesson we take? What is the secret sauce? Is it the far left like Zohran Mamdani? Is it somebody who's sort of in the middle like Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey? Or is it somebody who's almost a Republican like Abigail Spanberger? She's a former CIA agent. She's a national security hawk, and yet she's become the Democratic governor of Virginia. So what the lessons are for Democrats going into next year's midterms? Do they need progressive or centrist candidates? Or is it a horses for courses lesson? Should they actually say, okay, left-wingers are going to be elected in New York and right-wingers are going to be elected in Virginia? That's the sensible lesson that they should take, but politics isn't always sensible.
One of the most senior figures of the Democrat Party, Nancy Pelosi, says she's leaving politics. What will her legacy be, John?
Nancy Pelosi has been quietly easing her way out of politics. After losing the speakership a couple of years ago, she kind of anointed herself the Speaker Emeritus. At the age of 85, it's not surprising that she's not running next year for another 2-year congressional term. She's making way, and some Democrats had been quietly sort of trying to inch her out the door as well, announcing that they were going to run against her in the primary, which is very, very unusual. So they were sort of tapping her on the shoulder and saying, time's up, Nancy. But Nancy Pelosi, who led her party in the House of Representatives for 2 decades, starting back during the George W. Bush administration. Back in 2006, she became Speaker. She was not only the first woman ever to be Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States, so third in the line of succession. She is also arguably the most effective Speaker in American history. The legislative achievements that have defined the presidencies of both Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in large part Nancy Pelosi's victories. Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, needs to muster 218 votes. It is like herding cats, trying to get 218 members from different parts of the United States, from your party, maybe some from the other party, sometimes you have to twist their arm. Sometimes you have to say, well, it'd be a shame if somebody ran against you in the primary next year. Or, gee, I think we can get a couple of $1 million of campaign finance into your pockets next year to make your re-election a little bit easier. Or, how would you like a bridge with your name on it to be built in your district, or maybe a highway? So she would always find ways to wrangle people, find out what they wanted. So she had to talk to a lot of people about a lot of things to retain that party discipline, to keep the party together and get those votes to pass those pieces of legislation. Republicans, frankly, in the last 20 years have really struggled. So Democrats, even though they fret and think, oh, we haven't had time to do the things we wanted to do, when they've passed things like Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, Republicans have then tried for 15 years to get rid of that and pass something else, and they've failed time and time again. And that comes down to their lack of discipline as a caucus and the lack of skill in the House speakers that they've had, including the likes of John Boehner and Kevin McCarthy and now Mike Johnson. They haven't been able to herd the cats in the way that Nancy Pelosi has been able to. And that is ultimately her legacy, the fact that she got big things done, big pieces of legislation passed that changed American lives, made healthcare affordable for 40 million Americans who couldn't afford it before. It's still not cheap. It's still not perfect. There's a long way to go to get a better health system in America. But Nancy Pelosi can take a huge amount of credit.
John, thank you.
Thanks, Ross.